Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I thought I'd come on here. It's been a little while since I've been on doing an Instagram Live, and I was speaking to Momin, who's in charge of all the stuff, a lot of the stuff we do on social media, and he said to me, Rob, you haven't been on here to do an Instagram Live in a while. So I thought, come on. Do you know what time it is? 12:30 at night where I am. But it was a long day, and I thought I'll fit it in and I'll come in here and I'll talk a little bit about some OCD topics, some things that people have been asking about. And one of the things that I was going to talk about was in relation to the journey, focusing on the negative versus focusing on the positive. Focusing on what things are going to get us results, what things are going to get us to a position where we improve, not all the things that just sort of noise that distracts us. And there's so much of that in life with anything. With OCD, there's tons of that, because what you find is you are specifically looking at everything that you think's a door that's shut on you to you getting better. So let's look at some things. Ones that you always hear. This is how a lot of sessions start. This is how a lot of group calls start. People start with things like, I'm such and such age, I can never get better. I've been stuck for 20, 30 years. There's no chance of me ever recovering. My OCD is different to everyone else. I have so many compulsions, I'm never going to break them down. What the hell's going on with my hair in this Instagram? I have to accept this, leave it there as an exposure. And I think what happens is people are they're so fixated on looking at all the doors shut around them, all the things that are stopping them from getting better and have held them back in the past. There's so many. Like, for example, in my own journey, when I was stuck with contamination OCD, it was so bad. I thought, how am I ever going to get out of this? The compulsions were so bad. I thought, I must be a rare case. It shouldn't be this level. And so I was always looking for why I'm the worst case, why I'm different, why I'm stuck and never going to recover, why my situation is so much worse than other people's situations. Length of time was another one. I've been stuck for, why didn't I find this sooner? Why have I only found this now? Why didn't I find this when I was 21? Well, I did find it when I was 21. I found out that I had OCD around 21, but I had no idea that it could manifest in your head without an external physical compulsion. So therefore, I missed so much of what was going on. I thought the so-called, the term that I try and get rid of now in the OCD community, the pure OCD, just normal OCD with mental rumination and thoughts and fears in our head. I thought that was treatment resistant, something you couldn't stop, because I couldn't see how there's no exposures I could think of that you could do to get out of it. So I thought, well, this one has found its way around all the physical compulsions that I was doing. So I'd stopped all of those externally. So I thought, well, how can you target things happening in your head alone? How can you expose to that? So that for me was like, that felt sort of, just didn't seem like there was ever a way out of that. So then that went on for years like that, because I had no idea of how to deal with that. I didn't have the tools like today. Because like I said, and when I've often spoken about forums in the OCD community, the forums online with them were horrendous. I mean, obviously I'm going to speak very highly of our Facebook group, because it's something that I spent a long time building with our team to be a place where there's no reassurance, really focused on recovery, really optimistic place for improving the OCD recovery journey, so people don't stay stuck forever. Not negative, just no ends of sort of negative stories and no end of reassurance cycle going on. I didn't want it to be a place like that. So because of that, what then happened was, when in my time there wasn't that. There was just I went in those forums at times and I used to say, oh, I'm suffering from this kind of harm, real event OCD and so on. And they just used to always say things like, oh, that one I've been stuck with for 20 years or something like that. You've just got to learn to live with that. And it was just, It was terrible because you just couldn't see a way out because everyone was so negative and no hope. And so that's why everything that we did, we wanted to be seriously about recovery. We didn't want it to be a place where it was just no ends of hopeless stories, and that's why we spent so long making sure that everyone who got better started sharing their story about how they got better. Because otherwise, what happens with these things is because people don't share their story of how they got better, what went along in their journey, they never do that. Everyone just stays hopeless because all they see is just people stuck. They don't hear the stories of people who got better because everything is completely fixated on the negative. So it was so important to break that cycle. It had to be really optimistic. It had to show that change. And that's what I'm talking about with this negative focus on the doors that are closed. If you're constantly looking for doors that are closed, you could close every door on yourself from the moment you get out of bed. Okay, the second you get out of bed in the morning, you wake up and you think, right, what am I doing today? If you've got that really complete negative mindset, which is very much a part of OCD, or just most humans have got this mindset anyway, in general, because we're always sort of speaking negatively to ourselves. What happens is everything is a negative cycle. Everything. You could say, right, I'm too tired, I'm too lethargic, I can't work out, my back hurts, I'm not energetic enough to do any work. Shall I go and see some friends? Can't be bothered. What's the point? And then you could just shut every single door on moving forward. Okay, everything. Absolutely like that. Instead, you could have a really high optimistic outlook. You could say, wait a minute, today's like a new life. I've got a chance to change this. I can really go against everything. I can go and work out. I can go and see friends. I should just give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? People do it in situations nowhere near with much more difficult situations in their life going on than mine, and they still manage it. Now, when you start thinking of all that kind of stuff, it changes your perspective very, very quickly. But we don't tend to do that. We tend to focus on all the reasons why we can't. Do you know how many people come to me that have got so many other serious illnesses going on, as well as OCD? People come in that have got, like Wafrid from India, who's got dystonia, where the whole body is trembling. It's a nervous system disorder. I mean, that's pretty hard to live with, and he still runs Ironmans, marathons, and all sorts. People come to me that have very bad epilepsy, loads of seizures, for example, and they've got better to a more balanced place, but they're always worried about getting like that again. People come in that have that are in a psych ward, in a mental health hospital. They've been there for a long time. They're working on recovery. They've got obviously really a team around them, but the team around them hasn't got the knowledge that we have with OCD, but they're great for their support and day-to-day life. So you imagine their life, pretty difficult. Some of those people have lost all their jobs, lost their house, everything in some of those situations where it's been really bad. And then there's all sorts of people come in that have been homeless, who've just found a house. People have come into me that have gone bankrupt and lost their family and lost their business and lost everything. So all different varieties of things that happen. In relation to that question, saying I do not speak English, we're at the moment we are building a network of channels which is going to be a first for the OCD community, and which currently in production at the moment. Momin and myself have been working very hard on getting this set up, where you're going to see channels in Urdu, Hindi, Arabic, Russian, Chinese, Spanish, Portuguese, all and various other languages. You're going to have 50 plus videos from our YouTube channel on other YouTube channels covering all of those languages, and you will be able to so then people who don't speak English as a first language, or may not speak English at all, have access to OCD recovery tools that work, which is needed. Not a method. It's just learning to see things rationally from all the stuff that if you follow us and you see what we teach. It's from the likes of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca the Younger, Epictetus, Diogenes, through the Stoics, through the Stoicism, as well as through the founder of CBT, Albert Ellis, and Claire Weeks, the anxiety pioneer. All the different works that help us see life as it is in reality, instead of the distorted views we have when we start to think irrationally, which clouds our judgment in so many ways in life. Now, Those channels are going to be going live very soon. Obviously, it's a big project, and we're getting all of that ready, and to have for you, so you guys have access. Yes, I'm not. This isn't actually very late for me in relation to that question. You're up late. I go to bed pretty late, probably, I don't know, maybe 3 o'clock each morning, around 3 a.m. I get up a little bit later than usual. Sometimes I start work very early if I'm working with, like, for example, Australia. I work with various different countries each day, probably ranging between 10 to 30 countries a day, whether we've got group calls on and so on. So I have to work with all the different time zones of those countries. And I tend to work late into the night because it's nice and peaceful. And I've always been like that. I've always stayed up reasonably late. But I mean, for me, I feel very energetic and fantastic and really good with about 7 hours of sleep, somewhere 7 or 8. It doesn't really bother me. I'm not really too when I used to have fears of insomnia and so on, I used to be very frightened of not getting enough sleep. I used to think, oh God, this would be so bad for your body, and I was so worried about that. And nowadays, it's very, very different. I don't push it to a limit where I feel like unhealthy, but I live life to the full and I really enjoy it, and I like to be awake. Whereas in OCD, when I was really bad, I wanted to be asleep all the time. Now I like to about 7 hours gives me feeling really refreshed and energetic, and I can still do everything I want to do. And because of how my days finish, I have dinner reasonably late because of the last calls in the evening. So yeah, round about that time. I don't suggest it for people who are trying to build a life structure straight in the beginning with the OCD recovery journey, because they can easily fall into a habit of going to bed later, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning, getting up later, 11, 12, 1, which is what you do not want, because then it becomes a kind of lazy structure. You don't want that. And the same as, like, maybe, for example, working from home isn't productive for a lot of people when they're stuck in the OCD cycle, because they find themselves just sort of lazing around. They want to be getting up, getting out, doing different things like that. If they are in that structure, maybe going and working from another location or something like that, because unless you're really strict with time management, which I am pretty strict with time management. I say pretty strict, probably a bit over the top strict with it. I try and time box the day, so I try and think, well, what can we get done in this amount of time? And the projects that we do, I try and fit them into a much shorter time than I'd originally planned, so that we're sort of more optimistic on getting things done. But that's because we're trying to do something that's pretty difficult to do, so we have to kind of work like that. But I think with life, you want to just go with what works for you. You know, there's no judgment on anything. Do what you want. And now I've always lived like that in terms of what fits you in the best way, as long as it matches things in life. You don't really. You don't want to. You don't have in life. You don't have to conform, and I try not to conform to things. I try and live how I want to live. But you want to have a balance so that it's healthy and it's helpful for you, and so on. Especially with OCD, life structure is key. You don't want to be working from your bed. That would never happen. I never like to sit on the laptop working in bed. I used to in the past get up early, lots of emails, just sit on the laptop and do that. But then that habit is not good. And people that come to me, people that are in very serious jobs, that still do that and find that creeps over, and then when they're suffering from OCD and so on, they get stuck into a bit of a problem. So you always want to be working from a desk. You always want to be trying to get out each day. You always want to be doing those kinds of things. I'm out a lot. I go out walking outside all the time, around nature a lot in the day, and then when I'm working from home, it's always from a desk most of the time, and taking breaks and doing exercise in between. You've got to do that. But I work from here and an office, so I do a mixture of both, and I think that's really important. What was I going to say to you in relation to, yes, our webinars, in relation to one of those questions. With our webinars, we've brought in a student rates for those. So if you email info@ocdrecovery.com, there's now student packages available on all the webinars and group sessions, so that if anyone wants to attend. Remember, we do run our group sessions every Tuesday at 8:30 in the evening, 8:30 p.m. UK, and every Friday at 6:30 p.m. UK. Very, very important, because to remember those times. for the group sessions, because often people think we run just the webinars, but every week we cover anything on OCD and those questions and answers much more in detail than the Instagram lives. And those group calls that we've been running them for probably about, how long now? 4 years now? Around 4 years. Some amazing speakers on there. Every week I'm joined by Hannah Maggs and Oliver Vesey, who are people that are they've been working very closely with me, sharing all about their journeys to OCD recovery and all about how they got to the position they're in now, where they were from, all the sort of advice that they've learnt from their own journey, their own struggle as well. And they speak on those group calls, and they are really, really great. If you've ever been to any of those, you'll see that those guys are really knowledgeable on it, and I spent a long time working with them, helping them to get better, as well as helping to improve their knowledge. And I'm very lucky to have that team there of speakers that come to those calls. So those group calls, Tuesday 8:30, Friday 6:30, are great ones to come to. They're on Skype. They're usually somewhere between 20 to sometimes from 15 up to about 50 people at a time. They're long. Sometimes they go on to an hour and a half. We cover pretty much all the different questions that you want in loads of detail in relation to any subject on OCD, and it doesn't matter where you are based in the world. You can always get on those. What was I going to talk about other than that? So in relation to that, focusing on negativity, you really have to think about that, because it's so much of a problem. It's the barrier to everything. So it's the barrier to, let's forget OCD for the moment. Let's think about life in general, okay? So let's think about if you're wanting to let's say you're wanting to find a partner. You could say to yourself, the barriers would be, it takes too much effort, I'm never going to find them, the chance of finding someone that matches with me is too difficult, it's easier to stay single. You just shut all the doors on yourself in 1 second. Now let's think about physical fitness or something. You might say, I've got an injury, I haven't got time, I'm never going to be able to do this, and with OCD as well, it's too draining, or something like that. And so what you're getting is a problem where you're putting up all these barriers that are stopping you to growth. And OCD recovery is growth. It's skills for life. It's a program, a way of seeing things that you're going to change your perception of life, so that you're going to aid the recovery process. Recovery is learning to see life differently, learning to see life as it is in reality, learning to see that the fear is an illusion, and picking away at that and breaking down those layers, like on layers of an onion, of fear that are all around in different areas, like a web that you're chipping away at till they all fold away. And then when that happens, you feel the internal freedom, you feel the release, you feel the peace. But at first, you're not going to feel that because you're so caught up in the anxious cycle. You're completely fused to it, locked like that. So to pull that apart is very, very difficult, because you can't see that any other way, because you see it as fact, your fears. You see the way you see things, black and white and rigidly, is complete fact. It's complete. To you, that is horrible. That is awful. That is unforgivable. You're never going to get better if that was true. That kind of thinking, and that's what's got you so stuck. So we're having to change that. We're having to shift that. We're having to change that perspective, so it kind of it's making that, where you're sort of fused in your mind like that, it's making that slide apart. Now, that's hard to do at first when it's been something like, let's say, real event harm OCD, where it's really latched. It's not going to release that easily, because you've been stuck like that for so long. This has just become a habit for the brain to stay in that position. The sort of relaxed setting is that. So generally relaxed, you're in that position instead of that, which is that sort of calmness in the mind, like a flat sea instead of wavy sea, which is just lots of anxiety and sort of locked on and very sort of internally controlled. And that's what goes on there. Now, let me have a look at some of these questions, because I haven't done a Q&A on here for a long time. Not a long time, maybe a month or so, something like that, but long in terms of what we're talking about here. So let me have a look. If you've got any questions on here you want to ask me specifically about OCD, I'm going to answer those now. So let's have a look. Going back to the beginning here to read these. Just relapsed today after 27 days. I really want to eat one of these. Got here Haribo crocodile. So I'm going to eat this and read your questions for the moment. I'm just going to memorize a couple of questions and then answer them whilst I enjoy this crocodile sweet. I don't want to be really annoying chewing and talking, but I forgot that was there. So I'll be quick. Just relapsed today after 27 days. It doesn't matter if you've relapsed after 100 days. It doesn't matter if you've relapsed every 3 days. Forget it. It's not square one. It is just a situation where it's an anxiety roller coaster that we're riding all the time. Okay, not me now because I'm recovered, but I'm saying on the way to recovery it was like that. So you're going to have peaks and troughs. You're going to have ups and downs. I love your hair. It's a very nice comment. I certainly don't agree. I worry that I've been in my journey too long and I definitely won't recover. Forget it. There is never somebody who's ever come in the door to me that I've ever thought there's no chance of recovery. It doesn't exist. And I've seen what you would consider the worst cases of OCD on the planet. People that haven't left the house in 25 years. People that haven't spoken for 3 years. People that are in the hospital and made the 6th suicide attempt this week, and their family have called me and put me on the phone with their family and them to help save them, save their life basically. So those situations are very difficult. I often say my job is at times a bit like working in an ICU. It's it can be very, very full on. You've got to be ready for any situation that can happen. Now, in relation to your question, I think it's been too long and I won't recover. Forget it. People come in at 70 years old to me. That's rare. It doesn't happen that often. And by the time people get 70, I think I've had OCD for a long time. I'll put up with it. They get used to that sort of position, coasting or doing the best they can because they didn't have the tools that we have today. Average age is probably 20 to 45, around that age. Most people on social media, usually younger, usually people that want to get better and change their life when they're young and they found out about OCD recovery and so on. So they're productive there to really make a change. Doesn't matter. That is one of those doors I was talking about, shut on you. You've got to forget that. Forget that crap. There's no door shut on you. If you can speak, talk and breathe, same thing, speak and talk, listen and breathe, you have got the option to get better. Okay, it's not rocket science. It's learning the tools to recovery little by little so you can get better. It's not rocket science, but don't shut doors on yourself with I'm a different case. I've been stuck for the longest. I'm the worst. Forget all of that. OCD is going to say that shit all day long. You're the worst. Oh, you can't do it. If only you'd found out about this last year, whatever. Forget it. Absolute crap. Doesn't make any difference. There's no treatment-resistant OCD either. Never seen a case. And like I said, I've worked with thousands and thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. I've never seen a case of treatment-resistant OCD. We all think we're that case. I thought that for years, just as I was talking about just there now, and plenty of times in that journey. Oh, sensory motor OCD stuck. How will I ever stop that? How could anyone physically stop that? It's the brain doing it to itself. I believed at the time I was completely stuck. I thought there was no way out of it. I thought, how can you ever stop sensory motor OCD? Because it's like a loop in your head. There's no way you could expose to it. I'd always be scared of it. So I thought, there's no way I could break it. The same as earworm OCD with a repeated song in that sort of intrusive, torturous cycle. I thought, I'll never get out of this. And then I learned, it's how scared I am of it and my view that it'd be awful and my life ruined that's keeping the whole cycle going. That was at the core. Now, let's have a look at some more of these questions. I've recently been diagnosed with OCD and I'm struggling, particularly tonight. Well, you're going to struggle at different times of day and it's going to be up and down. Sometimes you're going to wake up in the morning, you're going to think, fuck, I'm so anxious and I don't know where that came from. Maybe you've been out drinking the night before and you have a hangover. Oh my God, I can't cope with this. It's so bad. Why is my real event false memory just suddenly come back now? You're going to have those situations. Those things are all going to happen. Maybe you're on a date and suddenly it's come in. Tries to attack your goals, anything you're going towards. And be aware it's going to raise its head at times like holidays, birthdays, weddings, birth of baby, everything, right? It's going to raise its head at all those special moments because it's trying to attack you moving towards your goals. And you're going to see it from all these different angles. You've got to learn to ride with it. Like I've often said, you could give me right now, if someone said that Haribo crocodile that I just ate is going to give me anxiety for the next year, 30% anxiety level for the next year, and that 100% is going to happen. How upset would I be tomorrow? I don't think I'd really be that bothered. I lived with about 70% anxiety for years, 80, 90% anxiety. The 30%, so what? I can still do everything. I could still live my life. It wouldn't be a big inconvenience. People believe like recovery is like some doorway to heaven. Oh, I've got to get there and then I'm free. When that happens, then my life goes back to how I want it. I've just got to get there and then I'll count every day. That's what I used to do. When I started to recover, I used to think, oh, that's one day in the bag that I've been feeling good, that I've got back from OCD trying to take from my life. That's another day in the bag. That's another day in the bag. That was the worst because I was going straight into another OCD cycle because I was telling myself, oh, I've got to count these days. I've got to control these days. I've got to ensure I've got this certain amount of number of days to be comfortable in my mind. Overdoing the recovery process. Oh, I've got to have everything organized. Oh, I've got to understand everything. I've got to be the perfect recovery journey. I've got to feel physically and mentally fit 150%. Nonsense. I was going complete opposite into overdrive again, which is obviously fueling the problem from the other side more so. How to handle fear of decisions. Well, the fear is not the decision making, it's the fear of not being able to make a decision usually. Making a mistake on your decision. That's one. Fear of making a mistake that you can't get out of, that's irreversible, and then your life's changed course. Our life is changing course all the time, right? If I everything that I do, if I think now to do an Instagram live every morning, then my life's changed position because now I'm doing Instagram live every morning, so I'm not doing something else, and then that other thing might have opened a door to something or made me come into something that it wasn't as helpful or whatever. Every single moment of our life changing the next moment. If we think that the decisions that we make a mistake on are so bad, but then not making a decision is equally bad. So people often with OCD avoid making decisions for fear of making the wrong decision. And then what happens is, by fear of making the wrong decision, what happens is then they have a situation where that is a decision. Not making a decision is a decision. It's a decision to not make a decision. So everything is like that. You've got to think of, if I sat in a chair and did nothing, that's a decision to sit in a chair and do nothing. Life's still passing me by. Time's still ticking down. That's going to happen, okay? So everything is a decision, like health. People with health OCD fears, oh, I'm not going to go to doctors and get a test or anything. Well, the problem with that is that's a decision, again, because you're choosing not to do something. That still has a health effect on the body, not doing anything, whereas as opposed to doing something. Now, obviously, at times we have to do and we have to not do, but it's the balance of the two. Like I said, with my health, I don't really have any problems apart from I have gastroesophageal reflux disease, which I've always had. I had really bad anxiety. That was flared up. That doesn't mean it goes. If I went out and drank a lot of whiskey tonight or something, like I did a few nights ago, if I did that, then I would probably have still now sometimes acid reflux that would come in. I also have a condition called LPR that you may have heard me talk about on this channel, which is a branch off of gastroesophageal reflux disease, where basically the vapor from the acid in the stomach can come up into the lungs and affect breathing. And I have that sometimes. Now that those conditions you can't get rid of. They're there. They don't bother me much. I don't notice them, but they're genetic. They're there. I think the LPR, which is the second one, was probably flared up by being anxious for so long in the past that's where that developed. I never used to have that in the past. From speaking to a lot of people with LPR and meeting lots of people who have recovered from anxiety, although it's rarer, that LPR as a condition itself is rarer. It's more common amongst people that have suffered PTSD or GAD or stuff. It was more so when I had generalized anxiety disorder, I first noticed that. Now, since recovered and there's no anxiety, it still raises up and down, not because I'm stressed, just for some genetic factor, maybe eating too much chocolate or maybe drinking too much alcohol or something like that, and then I notice it. So that can cause some symptoms randomly. That's about as far as it goes for health. I mean, of course, we've all got health problems overall if we go into every detail. I've got a bulging disc in my neck, used to cause me a lot of physical pain very badly from an injury, but don't really notice that on a day-to-day basis, apart from when I'm holding the phone for too long when it's not on a tripod. So those kinds of things. But other than that, those are the only conditions, and they're not like really, really seriously life-affecting. They can cause problems now and again. That's but nothing like a sort of a serious disease or if I had lots of back injuries or something like that. But you're not going to have perfect health. Does it affect my life on a day-to-day basis? No. Does it overall, am I very healthy and fit? Yes. Yeah, I think that's, I can't remember where I was going with that point, actually, to be honest. I was just got a little bit lost there. This live is an exposure for me. When I was having an okay day and you would post or go live, you would what? Maybe that's continued in the next post somewhere. Could OCD be linked to deeper things that stem from childhood? This is where people get lost. It's your belief about the thing in the now that's causing the problem. People go to psychodynamic therapy, which doesn't work for OCD. Can give more of an insight into a lot of problems, of course, that in life, but for OCD sufferers, not the path at all. And what happens is they go looking into the past for these things, thinking if I uncover that, then it'll release. Doesn't release like that. You would know right now that your problem is there because your belief about it and your fear of it would be directly at that. So it's changing your irrational beliefs, your perception of things in the now that we need to do, not going sort of hunting in the past for this hidden gem of a trauma that we've got to unlock with this imaginary key, and then we'll be free, because that's the classic OCD mental cycle where you're sort of chasing for this imaginary key for an imaginary lock that doesn't exist, and then you're just compounding that internal compulsion cycle and getting lost and locked there. So you don't want to go down that route. You don't want to go down the hypnotism route. You don't want to go down the psychodynamic route. It's a never-ending story, and people always branch off there. I see people that come into me feeling great, and then, oh my God, what if I have a trauma? Quick, got to go and get trauma therapy. Oh, quick, what if this? And then they're going from one place to the other. I see people that come into me that have got 6 different therapists, and they're in one place and another and another. I can't miss anything. I've got to do it all perfectly, otherwise I'll be stuck forever. And it's fear of fear staring them straight in the face, but they won't take that risk at that point in time until they realise that. Same as with health OCD, endless tests. Every day people saying in the WhatsApp groups, I'm going for this test, I'm going for that test. Not needed. Most people have got their advice. Most people have got all their advice from their doctor talking about what tests to have. And of course we go by the doctor for all these different things. And we need to, but I'm saying, say for example, with the fear of HIV, chance of contracting HIV, for example, from a male, if the female had HIV, from an unprotected sex incident, if they had HIV, the odds is like 1 in 2,000. So that would mean, you'd have to sleep with them quite a few times, unprotected, with the known person being HIV, to have a risk of getting it. But obviously, in general population, they have to recommend lots of STD and HIV checks to keep it all, to keep people keeping their health intact, and so that people, if everyone sort of was aware of these facts more in general public and thought of that, then people would care less and less and less, and it would be more of a problem. So they always have to advise that. But in reality, chances of contracting HIV are so slim in most occasions. There's no need for tests, yet OCD sufferers go for many, as did I in the past. Let's have a look. I'm not going to answer all of these questions because, as I said, it's now 1 a.m. Should I reward myself for completing successful exposures? By that, do you mean like going and taking yourself out for a beer, going and buying yourself a present? No. You should be happy that you've done them, but you don't need to go overboard. It's just an exercise for facing a fear, and that's about it. Because otherwise, we're making it into too much of a big task. It's just facing a fear and doing it. There's no harm in rewarding yourself for it. It's good. You've accomplished something. That's really good. But I think often if we do too much of that, it's sort of that whole non-self-acceptance stuff where we're trying to give ourselves a pat on the back in one thing and then tell ourselves off at another time for not doing something. So we want to try and get that balance right. Who managed to recover from OCD? Me. That's who recovered from OCD, because I'm talking about myself. But many, many people have recovered from OCD that we work with, and many people are on the journey to recovering from OCD. And you can read all their stories on our Instagram page. We've got probably the largest number of recovery journey stories of anywhere on our page. If you just go on there, you'll see all the stories. If you scroll down our Instagram, there's tons of them on there, so you can see all about that. That's why we called our company OCD Recovery, and I bought the domain name at auction years ago, ocdrecovery.com, because I wanted something to really highlight the fact that OCD recovery is what it's all about, not OCD recovery lumping it and putting up with it, which is what it used to feel like when I was stuck back in the time then. Just reading your questions and scrolling down through this. Very good question. Advice for when you and your therapist can't think of any exposures for a real event OCD. Well, when that situation happens, it's the reason that's tricky is because if your therapist really understands OCD, they should be able to think of all these, but they often don't, and they're trying their best with what tools they have. But for example, I can't think of anything that I couldn't think of some kind of exposure for. There's always something. But that doesn't mean you're always going to be able to get into it perfectly with an exposure. That's why we have to learn to dispute the irrational beliefs and move towards unconditional self-life and other acceptance to chip away at that. Because even with the perfect exposure, so for example, Oliver, who came to me, he'd been at a clinic in New York for a year doing exposures every single week, and he hadn't got better. He was really stuck. So he was doing all the exposures necessary, but he hadn't got under those IBs, those irrational beliefs. So for him, it was crucial to do the work to get under those irrational beliefs. So it's a combination of two. But yeah, if your therapist can't do it, is not giving you enough, maybe they're trying their best and it's very hard to find it, or maybe you need a second opinion because they haven't got a very good knowledge of coming up with exposures. But it could be one or two. Please can you save this live? I am saving this live. This live will be going up on YouTube. I'll be asking Momin to post that tomorrow or maybe this evening. So that will be up on YouTube later. How is existential OCD different from the major philosophical questions? Well, let me demonstrate. If I was a human that didn't have OCD and you said, why is there something rather than nothing? It's a question that's difficult to, obviously we can't give an instant answer. I'm sure Krauss could give an answer. Lawrence Krauss could give, who I think is great on him and Dawkins on a lot of these kind of questions, but definitely not to be searching for an answer from them to cure existential, because it won't work like that. But they would be able to explain, he would be able to in particular explain why there is something rather than nothing in some form or another, not knowing the exact answer obviously because they don't, but being able to give how that could possibly occur. Now, with a situation like that, a human that didn't have OCD, they wouldn't be that bothered by that situation. They would think, oh, this is kind of I don't understand this, but there's no fear element. There's no sort of internal latching where the person gets sort of locked in this cycle, which occurs with OCD, where we get locked in that OCD cycle. So they wouldn't experience that. So the question is there, but the anxious response like cycle doesn't occur in the human being that doesn't have OCD. They might find it perplexing, I don't understand this, but not that chronic sort of latched anxiety, I can't even live another second or enjoy my life ever again if this were to be the case. Fear of dying, I cover on our YouTube channel. I think there's a few videos on there now on fear of dying, so you'll have to check that out because that's at the core of so many OCD fears, specifically fear of death. Just going through your questions. A lot of books being recommended there for OCD in the comments. Those books I didn't particularly find helpful. That's why the books on our reading list are on there on our website. Get to the real core of the problems by the founder of CBT, Albert Ellis. A lot of those books are based on the concept of leaving thoughts there, a part of the process, a key part that we're covering, but they tend to talk about just changing your relationship with thoughts. Thoughts are just thoughts. And if you follow this account, you'll understand that usually in chronic OCD cases doesn't fully get under it. Chronic guilt and chronic anxiety tends to stay latched in the background. So a lot of those books, they get very, very hard to understand, and lots of ways of explaining thoughts are thoughts and changing relationships and relabel and reattribute thoughts. And I spent years doing that and got nowhere. Got about 10% improvement because it would just stay latched with, this is real, your case is real, this isn't OCD, you're the exception. It wouldn't budge on that. And that's what this account is all about. Please make more videos on HOCD and ROCD. There's quite a lot of videos on HOCD and ROCD. If you go on the playlist on our YouTube channel and scroll through those, you'll find a lot of videos on there. I've never heard you talk about just right OCD. Just right OCD is the feeling of just right. Look, I just say that crocodile. If I was waiting for that crocodile to feel just right, I'd be eating that whole bloody pack of Haribo right now. Oh, that one didn't feel that right. That one, but with different things, with maybe closing a door, turning off the oven, all that kind of stuff. Just right feeling. It's an illusion. You can't get it, and so you keep chasing. Future of OCD treatments. We've got a few videos on that on the YouTube channel. If you go on there, a few videos on the future of OCD treatment. I'm very optimistic. I think things are about to drastically change in so many areas. Check those out. We'll be doing a podcast soon. I absolutely will be. It's one of the things on my list. Certainly won't be doing it at 1:30, 2 in the morning. Probably a bit late. Just going through your questions. I really appreciate coming across this group. Please join our Facebook group. If you haven't, we do all these Instagram lives as well, and we provide lots of free content in the YouTube channel and the Facebook group. So if you haven't joined our Facebook group, please do. It's the OCD Recovery Group. We're trying to build that into a big community for people that can help each other with all different bits of advice from their journeys to empower one another to recover. That's how we're going to change OCD. Together, coming together and helping each other with our journeys, not feeling alone, lost in a negative cycle, but helping one another. Good to see Nick here answering some questions from the YouTube channel. Always good to have people helping out in the comments here. I wish I could afford therapy. Well, like I was saying, free content. You've got video channel there with 500 videos. You've got the Facebook group with 12,500 members. So you've got a lot of resources there for free. You can work through and really improve your knowledge. One of the best things you could do is just go on the Instagram page, scroll right to the bottom and just start reading different posts. Not every post, but just learning, treating it like a book. I mean, social media accounts are sort of like the books of modern times. So if you just go through and you just scroll up our page, you'll just find so many different articles. We've written 3,200 posts on there. And so there's a lot of material there for you to check out for free. And then obviously, if you want assistance that's very sort of hands-on specific to your problem, we do the one-to-one coaching with me, and then we do the groups and the webinar calls as well. God, that's going to be a long question. Nick, what part of Jersey are you from? I don't want to see the answers to this. It's going to go on all evening. Just going through these questions. Every time I say I'll come on here and do a quick Instagram live, it's always a lot longer. I've been trying to do these snippets. Never work out snippets. It's always so long because with OCD there's so much to say, so many things to cover. So I intend to start off with a 5-10 minute video and then it goes on and on, which is a good thing for you and is a good thing for me, but not at 20 past 1 in the morning. YouTube channel is OCD Recovery YouTube channel. It's a link, I think, in the bio on this page. The stuff Rob tells me on these calls is no different than a YouTube page or Instagram channel. Absolutely. Everything we're teaching on here is what we teach in the calls. But in the calls, it's very specific to the problem. So really looking at how to get under it and to put in a plan of action for you with exposures and disputing irrational beliefs. It's exactly the same information, all the things we're learning, all the rational thinking and so on. But really applying it is tricky on your own, so that's why we provide that service. But everything we provide, it can be done. And you have all those videos, and you can have them in all different languages, as well as the Facebook group. There's so much, but OCD does require often a very hands-on approach where it's in a chronic format, and you'll find those webinars, group calls, and one-to-ones helpful. What would an irrational belief be with HOCD? It would be something like, if I'm gay, it would be terrible because my family might reject me. That would be an example. Whereas it wouldn't be terrible. We think it would be terrible and terrifying based on our perception of it through that irrational lens. So breaking down and changing that. Guys, great to have you all here. I'm going to go now. And I will be back on here very soon doing another Q&A like this and covering a lot more of your questions. And covering lots of different topics that we want to cover because there's so many more things to cover that we haven't done on the YouTube channel. And I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that covers most of the things that I wanted to cover this evening. Don't want to annoy my neighbours with too many Instagram lives late at night. They've probably become OCD experts themselves, hearing all of these topics over the years. Yeah, I think that covers about everything. Anything on Instagram you want to ask me, you can always put in the comments below on our posts. Just ask your questions there. If you want to sign up for one-to-one group or sessions or webinars, send an email to info@ocdrecovery.com and we will get you booked in for one of those. Guys, great to see you all, and I will see you on the next one, on the next Instagram Live. Take it easy.